The sky fractured open, not with thunder, but with silence. Above every continent, the stars dimmed, blotted out by a behemoth vessel that swallowed orbits whole. It hovered like a predator circling a wounded prey. The broadcasts began seconds later, no delay, no translation errors. Every screen flickered, every signal overridden. The image was of a towering alien general, his armor pulsing with veins of dark red energy, his voice a venomous growl cloaked in arrogance. You will offer tribute. You will kneel. Resistance will be answered with extinction. The message, though calm in tone, was not a negotiation. It was a demand, one that carried the weight of hundreds of conquered worlds behind it. Planets stripped of culture, species erased, civilizations turned into data points. Earth was next, not special, not different, just another on the list. Governments scrambled. Emergency meetings ignited behind closed doors. The UN's emergency session devolved into shouting, each leader questioning the capacity for retaliation. Some wanted diplomacy, others urged surrender. The calculations were cruelly simple. Earth's arsenal was dwarfed. Their fleets spanned systems. Their weaponry, reverse-engineered from hundreds of fallen empires, eclipsed every nuclear deterrent Earth had. But amidst the chaos, one secure line activated. Not public. Not political. A transmission pulsed through the black, tight-beamed, encoded. It wasn't from the president, nor any admiral or general. It was older. Deeper. Buried within systems most thought were dormant. A reply blinked into the Dominion's flagship, barely a whisper, but loud enough to freeze the alien general's breath. No. Just that. One word. Then the voice continued. You came here for tribute. What you'll get is body bags. And if you're lucky, they'll be yours. Silence. The alien general stared at the signal origin, then chuckled, a cruel, guttural sound. Humans. Always bravado. Always extinct. The fleets moved into position. From above, they observed the surface with surgical indifference. Thousands of armored drop ships launched simultaneously. Every major city was marked. This was no warning strike, this was occupation. The Dominion had done it 100 times before. Shock troops land. Resistance is crushed. Local infrastructure is claimed. It was a formula. But this time, something shifted. Their flagship's tactical officer frowned. One of the deployments, New York, was no longer reporting. The video feed had gone static. Not jammed. Not cut. Just absent. 30 minutes later, a blurred transmission leaked into Dominion channels from Earth's surveillance net. A pile of alien bodies, stripped of gear, arranged deliberately in front of a scorched landing craft. One stood tall among the corpses, a human in black armor, unmarked, weapon resting casually on his shoulder. He didn't speak. He simply pointed upward, toward the sky, and then the feed ended. The general dismissed it as a one-off resistance pocket. But then it happened again. And again. In Tokyo. In Istanbul. In Johannesburg. By the sixth location, it was no longer an anomaly, it was a pattern. In every instance, the Dominion troops didn't just fail. They were hunted. No civilian casualties. No collateral damage. Clean. Efficient. A style the Dominion didn't expect from what they labeled ferals with guns. A captured fragment from one alien trooper's helmet chem escaped into the Dominion network. They're not civilians, they're soldiers. All of them. And they're not scared. They're smiling. What kind of species smiles while bleeding? At Earth's military command, analysts reviewed the footage. No one claimed credit. No unit insignias matched. These weren't standard forces. These were ghosts. Operatives pulled from black books. Some believed the humans had activated a dormant contingency, a figure from old war myths. No one had seen him in decades, but the name passed like wildfire through Dominion ranks. The Boogeyman. The general scoffed when the name was uttered in his command chamber. Primitive superstition, he growled. But even he noticed the eyes of his officers, once certain, now cautious. Across Earth, the response to the demand for tribute was spreading, not through governments, but through resistance. Independent cells coordinated in silence. Old veterans returned to service. Hackers hijacked Dominion comms and beamed encrypted instructions globally. They weren't following orders. They were preparing for war. And through it all, a single fact cemented itself into the Dominion's tactical assessments. Humans weren't panicking. They weren't begging. They were calculating. Back on the flagship, the general received a second message. Untraceable origin. No encryption. Just a voice, distorted and cold. This ends with your last breath. Pack warm. Hell is cold this time of year. The Dominion responded with overwhelming force. Reinforcements poured from orbit, armored drop craft, air skimmers, automated hunter drones. Their command structure issued one order: crush resistance completely. Earth was labeled hostile, and the fleet's full planetary occupation protocol activated. They had done it to others. Humanity, they assumed, would fall the same way, loud at first, then silent forever. But they didn't understand humans. The first wave hit Sao Paulo. An entire battalion touched down, secured their perimeter, and waited for orders. 10 minutes later, their external comms scrambled. Visuals jammed. Motion sensors triggered in every direction. The last report from that unit came 3 minutes later. We've lost visual on all sectors, some things. Then static. Follow-up scans showed nothing but silence. When reconnaissance drones arrived, they transmitted back images of shattered Dominion tech and armor scattered across empty streets. The troopers were gone. No bodies. No survivors. No clear method of attack. The same pattern repeated in Moscow. Then Sydney. Then Lagos. Each time, the human response became more precise. They weren't throwing bodies at the invaders. They were dissecting them. Tactically, surgically. No two attacks were alike. Sometimes explosions ripped drop ships apart before landing. Other times, Dominion patrols simply vanished from sealed buildings. Even when Dominion units deployed anti-personnel drones, those drones returned, altered, reprogrammed, weaponized against their creators. The command network grew anxious. Their tactical AI flagged Earth's counter-response as non-standard, unpredictable, and escalating. The aliens expected fear, surrender. Instead, they were met with something unfamiliar, intelligence sharpened by desperation. Humans didn't fight fair. They didn't follow patterns. They learned faster than the Dominion adapted. One Dominion captain transmitted an emergency request for orbital fire support over Chicago. But before permission was granted, every Dominion comm tower in the area overloaded and fried simultaneously. They never traced the signal that triggered the cascade failure. The entire fleet in that sector lost coordination. By the time it was restored, their forces on the ground had been dismantled piece by piece. In the background of these battles, something else was happening. Alien chatter revealed mentions of a shadow figure seen briefly during ambushes. Helmet cams caught flickers, motion too fast to track, presence too faint to confirm. One Dominion squad left behind only a blood-scrawled word etched into their dropship hull. Him. The Boogeyman wasn't just myth now. He was battlefield reality. Psychological destabilization took root in the alien ranks. New recruits were shown footage of Earth's counterstrikes and given extra fortitude conditioning, yet their morale deteriorated. They feared the shadows, the silence, the unseen hand. Many believed the humans had unleashed something they couldn't stop, something not even fully human anymore. An intercepted transmission between Dominion officers confirmed the breakdown. If they can get into our ships, they can get into our heads. They already have. By the third day, Earth wasn't defending, it was hunting. Entire areas were evacuated not out of fear, but to set traps. Civilians coordinated with unknown units, providing intel via secure mesh networks the Dominion couldn't trace. Human forces didn't broadcast their victories. They left messages in the wreckage, short, chilling, and always personal. One read, "You came to conquer. We came prepared to bury you." Even Earth's environment turned hostile. Dominion supply carriers mysteriously rerouted into uncharted zones. Satellites malfunctioned mid-orbit. Automated mining drones sent from the fleet began self-destructing without warning. None of it was random. Everything was calculated. In desperation, the Dominion attempted to bomb a known human resistance cell in South Asia. But before their payload launched, Dominion targeting systems went blind. Instead, their coordinates were reversed, sending the strike into one of their own orbital refueling depots. Internal sabotage. Dominion engineers found human code embedded in their systems, disguised as native processes. It hadn't been injected during the war, it had already been there. Humanity had been watching. Waiting. The final proof came when the Dominion attempted to regroup in Antarctica for a secured fallback. They landed without resistance. No humans. No signs of life. Then the ice split. A deep sound echoed through the comms, low, metallic, and deliberate. One word. Welcome. The ice shelf detonated beneath them. Their carriers sank into the frozen ocean. No survivors. No counterattack. Just another message broadcast across open space to the remaining ships. You're not facing an army. You're facing a species that doesn't know how to lose. The Dominion, once conquerors, now fought just to survive. And Earth had only begun to respond. He was never part of any official roster. No records. No origin file. No rank, no code, no unit patch. Whispers from past wars hinted at a presence, never confirmed, always denied. They called him a ghost, a weapon, a curse given human shape. The name passed from lips to databanks across enemy lines, repeated like superstition, the Boogeyman. He had no real face, just outcomes. When he appeared, entire battlefields collapsed without explanation. Surveillance systems failed. Reinforcements never arrived. High-value targets disappeared or were found days later, their bodies contorted, untouched externally, but with terror etched into their last expressions. The effect was always the same: silence before, wreckage after. The Dominion considered him a fabrication. A legend to keep morale high among fragile Earth forces. They dismissed the warnings. But after 7 high-ranking officers went missing from different theaters, without trace, without breach, the term returned to their threat matrix. At first, a joke. Then a warning. Finally, a reality they couldn't explain away. It started with the Adrax command vessel. Docked in low orbit, heavily guarded, it served as a tactical relay hub for Dominion operations across 3 continents. Static blacked out its outgoing comms without prior signal interference. Emergency crews sent to re-establish control entered to find all lights dead and every bulkhead sealed. Inside, no bodies, no signs of violence. Just gear, weapons, armor abandoned. The only surviving system, the internal recorder, looped a single phrase in English. You were told not to come. That message wasn't broadcast. It was embedded directly into their system kernel. Not hacked. Written into the firmware. From then, sightings increased. Dominion infantry units reported a dark figure moving between shadows, untouched by motion sensors or thermal scans. When they fired, nothing hit. When they chased, they vanished. One elite squad claimed to have cornered the target in a derelict warehouse. What they found was an audio loop of their own voices, repeating commands they hadn't yet given. One by one, they turned on each other. Only one survived. His report was incoherent. He didn't speak the Boogeyman's name, he screamed it. The psychological toll was worse than any kinetic damage. Dominion personnel began requesting reassignment off Earth. Some deserted. Others sabotaged their own equipment, pretending malfunctions just to avoid patrols. Command noticed a 43% drop in mission efficiency without any visible engagement. Morale algorithms failed to stabilize. Conditioning routines collapsed. The Boogeyman didn't attack armies. He dismantled structure. Disrupted continuity. Removed critical links. Each operation was targeted, precise, brutal without spectacle. 2 more Dominion sub-commanders were found dead inside sealed bunkers, no entry recorded, internal organs liquefied but no wounds. Theories ranged from exotic tech to biological agents, but Earth denied involvement. There was no evidence, only outcomes. When asked for answers, human channels responded with a simple line: "He's not ours to command, only to unleash." What unnerved the Dominion most wasn't the deaths, it was how Earth never acknowledged them. No public announcements. No propaganda. No demands. They acted as if the Boogeyman was just part of the environment. A storm. A force. Not a person. Then came the moment that changed everything. During a secured Dominion broadcast meant for internal command only, a video hijacked the feed. It showed a Dominion frigate drifting in orbit, gutted from within, oxygen venting in a frozen spiral. The bridge, normally sealed and armored, was wide open. Inside, scrawled on the wall in red, "I warned you." The figure stepped into frame. No face. Black armor. No insignia. No weapon drawn. Just silence and that cold, heavy presence. He stared into the camera, unblinking, unmoving. After 6 seconds, he spoke. "Wrong planet. Wrong species." The video cut. The feed returned. No one spoke in the command chamber for 12 seconds. The Dominion Grand Tactician ordered full reallocation of command assets off-planet. Emergency retreat operations were discussed for the first time. He'd become more than a myth. He was now a tactical factor. A variable no algorithm could resolve. The Dominion wasn't built to process asymmetrical warfare on this scale. They had numbers. Firepower. Infrastructure. But not fear management. Not emotional resistance. Their species had long abandoned myth and paranoia. Earth hadn't. Humans had weaponized both. And now the myth walked in flesh. The Boogeyman didn't lead armies. He didn't need to. His presence alone cracked enemy cohesion. His silence destabilized leadership. His legend spread faster than any virus. He wasn't Earth's sword. He was the shadow behind it. The Dominion's grip faltered. What was once a coordinated campaign devolved into scattered, disconnected maneuvers. Their battlefield networks were no longer reliable. Communication between orbital command and surface forces became delayed, then distorted, then non-existent. Their encrypted relays weren't just jammed, they were overwritten with Earth-coded signals. Not intercepted. Repurposed. Their combat AI began issuing contradictory orders. Troops were deployed to safe zones that had already fallen. Reinforcement drops landed in hostile territory, surrounded the moment their boots hit ground. Dominion leaders suspected infiltration. What they found was worse. The sabotage wasn't physical, it was systemic. Their core logistics had been compromised long before the invasion even began. The humans had anticipated them. Dominion fleet operators noticed anomalies in their orbiting supply chains. Automated fuel transfers diverted without commands. Orbital defense arrays misfired at friendly vessels. Attempts to reset systems triggered lockdowns requiring non-existent biometric keys. Internal security suspected internal rebellion. But Earth hadn't turned their soldiers, Earth had turned their technology. Entire Dominion databanks were purged remotely. Tactical mapping systems displayed terrain that didn't exist. When their drones entered those areas, they vanished, either torn apart or pulled offline. AI tried to adjust. It couldn't. For every patch they deployed, humans had 2 more vulnerabilities already exploited. On the surface, Dominion squads refused to patrol after nightfall. Not out of superstition, out of experience. That's when their losses spiked. That's when sensor feeds became white noise. That's when they were stalked. Isolated. Removed. Not killed with artillery or airstrikes. Removed silently. Without warning. Without struggle. One squad's last report captured a chilling fact. Their equipment didn't malfunction. It obeyed someone else. The Boogeyman's interference wasn't just physical. Dominion firewalls recorded a signature, non-replicable, intelligent, fluid. Not a program. A presence. It reconfigured security logs, turned cameras inward, redefined friend-foe protocols mid-operation. The Dominion's own machines turned against them, and their attempts to fix it only deepened the corruption. Some alien officers began wearing human gear in the field, hoping the systems wouldn't register them as threats. It didn't work. A drone swarm, once programmed to patrol perimeter zones, formed words in the air with synchronized lights after wiping out an infiltration squad. Leave. Humanity didn't meet force with equal force. They met it with precision, with corruption of structure, with psychological eradication. The Dominion, so used to compliance through domination, met a species that studied their tactics and prepared not just to resist, but to collapse them from within. Even their leadership wasn't safe. An admiral stationed aboard the Mid-Tier command ship, Threxus, awoke to find every crew member gone. No alarms, no warnings. Just silence and flickering lights. The only message left on the central screen was, "You wanted a tribute. We pay in annihilation." The ship, now drifting, later collided with one of their own fuel stations. It had been redirected with falsified navigation data. Earth's interference wasn't sabotage anymore, it was orchestration. Panic spread quietly but deeply. Entire fleets shifted to high orbit, hoping to regain control. It only worsened. Earth's cyber warfare units, long dismissed as primitive, had cracked Dominion code not through brute force, but through understanding. They'd listened, observed, mirrored, and rewrote the rules of engagement. Dominion morale collapsed. Some captains refused to follow deployment orders. Others abandoned posts entirely, triggering mutiny within their own ranks. A fractured command structure attempted to regroup on the far side of the moon. Earth knew. Before they could establish a fallback zone, kinetic rods launched from classified Earth platforms buried deep underground struck their fleet. No energy weapons. No signatures. Just gravity and precision. What remained of their outer fleet attempted withdrawal. Escape vectors were plotted. But their jump drives wouldn't engage. Not broken, disabled remotely. A final message replaced their navigation systems. Your exit has been denied. No threats. No bargaining. Just control. Humanity didn't need space superiority. They didn't need to match numbers or mass. They needed only information, fear, and intent. They used all three without pause, without warning, without mercy. The Dominion, once feared, now whispered Earth's name like a curse. Not for its strength. Not for its technology. But for its ability to make everything familiar, alien. And above all, the Boogeyman had yet to speak again. His silence was louder than any scream. The last Dominion vessel hovered above Earth with damaged thrusters and dead silence across its channels. The command deck, once a theater of strategy, had become a tomb of whispers and doubt. No more calls for reinforcements. No more plans. Just static and waiting. The war wasn't ending. It had already ended. The survivors were merely realizing it too late. What remained of the invasion fleet began broadcasting distress signals into deep space, pleading for aid from sectors untouched by Earth's retaliation. None responded. Not because they didn't hear, but because they didn't dare answer. The messages themselves were corrupted midstream, overwritten by a now familiar voice. Calm. Cold. Measured. You asked for tribute. You received your answer. Let this transmission reach every empire that watches from the dark. Earth does not kneel. In every Dominion stronghold across the stars, panic bloomed. Entire systems began severing communication links with Earth sectors, attempting to erase all traces of involvement. Governors resigned. Trade routes diverted. Worlds once eager to exploit Earth's resources now labeled it untouchable. Back in orbit, a battered Dominion envoy managed to establish contact with Earth's upper atmosphere relay. The voice was trembling, words practiced carefully. It offered withdrawal, reparations, even political concessions. Earth said nothing. The channel stayed open for 11 minutes, filled only with the faint hum of a signal intentionally left unanswered. Not silence. Rejection. On the ground, Earth didn't celebrate. There were no parades, no broadcasts of victory. The entire planet moved as if this outcome had always been expected. Factories resumed. Satellites launched. Defensive arrays reset. Humanity didn't declare itself savior or hero. It simply continued forward, quiet, relentless, prepared for anything that followed. Dominion vessels attempting to retreat faced a final obstacle. A net of orbital mines, not primitive explosives, but self-guided intelligence units. No warnings. No lights. Just impact. One by one, the ships blinked off sensors. Not all were destroyed. Some were disabled, drifting. Their crews left to observe what the galaxy would become after this mistake. Then came the last transmission. This time, it wasn't from a hacked feed or rerouted relay. It was direct. Personal. The Boogeyman spoke. You were warned. Not by words, but by history, by instinct, by every sign you refused to see. You mistook silence for weakness. Patience for fear. You saw a world and thought it vulnerable. You failed to see the species behind it. You failed to understand what happens when humanity is given no choice but one. A pause. No music. No ambient background. Just his voice. Now you'll spend the rest of your existence remembering this day. Not as a loss, but as a lesson. The line cut. From that moment, Earth became legend. In distant colonies, children were told bedtime stories not of monsters beneath their beds, but of a world that made monsters of its own. A planet that birthed something the stars couldn't contain. Ships turned away from Earth's borders, not by blockade, but by the memory of what had happened. Human ambassadors arrived at interstellar councils with no fleets, no weapons, just presence. No one interrupted them. No one laughed. Treaties were signed in silence. Agreements offered before requests were made. The word Earth no longer referred to just a planet. It became a warning label burned into collective memory. Even the Dominion, shattered and fragmented, rewrote its own history. Official records classified the failed invasion as a strategic miscalculation. Internally, however, they established a new doctrine: Earth was off limits. Not because of strength, but because of something deeper. Something they still didn't fully understand. They couldn't define what they'd faced. Was it one man? A covert species-wide response? Advanced AI? Biological manipulation? No conclusion ever agreed upon. Only one line stayed constant across every report. He didn't just fight. He made us afraid to try again. Years passed. Yet across space, whenever war councils debated the conquest of lesser-developed worlds, someone always brought up Earth. The room would fall silent. Maps would be adjusted. And the plan would change. Because that was humanity's true victory, not just in battle, but in legacy. They weren't feared for what they destroyed. They were feared for what they could become when provoked.